Awesome. So we can go ahead and get started. Welcome to
Okay,
Quarantine Break. I'm Kiana, founder of Eat Soccer, and I'm so excited to have with us Case Jernigan. He is an artist and animator, and he's going to share his amazing story with us today. Welcome so much.
good to see you. Nice meeting you in person. Well,
Thank you.
kind
Nice to
of.
meet you as well. What was your first introduction to art?
My mom bought me a table. It was a long plastic table when I was a very little kid. I was probably 3 or 4, and it had a roll attached to it with butcher paper. And
Hmm.
so you could roll out the butcher paper and clamp it down, and I could work with crayons or ink or markers all over it, and then pull that sheet off and roll down another one. That's probably my earliest art memory, is that I was encouraged to have my own little miniature space to work on, and I remember sitting there probably every day and working.
At what point did you realize that art was going to be a part of your life's work?
I had this memory come back to me the other day that I'd completely forgotten about. Actually, this must have been in 3rd or 4th grade. I had a teacher who did this project that was about, I guess it was supposed to be about positivity and recognizing positive things and attributes in your fellow classmates. And you were supposed to write down a positive attribute or something interesting about, or a talent about every single person in your class. And it was all going to be compiled together, and you'd receive your sheet that said all the things that people thought about you. And I love sports, and I played tennis, I played soccer, and I really wanted and expected my sheet to come back saying, athletic, good at tennis, whatever, because that's how I identified myself.
Hmm.
No one said that. Every single kid in the class said artistic. So there was the word artistic with, like, I don't know, there were 20 kids in my class with like 19 stars next to it. And I remember being very upset about this because other kids' sheets said funny, cool, smart, handsome, good at soccer. And I was like, I want to be those things. But they, I guess, in some way knew me better than I knew myself back then. They knew what I was supposed to be doing.
Now, pursuing a career in the creative arts can present challenges, one of which can be your family not being as supportive. I'm assuming your family was not following that category. Did you receive any pushback? And if so, how did you handle it?
Mm. My family, I've been very lucky. My family have been very, very supportive of me doing what I do. There have been some artists in my family tree, and so I think there's always been an interest from my mother and father for me to make art. They, I think they feel a little bit like lapsed artists themselves. They wanted to make things, but just couldn't quite figure out how to do it. I think it was maybe too intimidating for them.
Mhm.
They both worked in the medical field, but when I showed an interest in art, both of them were very, very encouraging, for which I'm incredibly thankful, because definitely the culture where I grew up in South Carolina, being an artist was not seen as a viable career path at all. It was seen as something very risky, but my parents could see how much I loved it, and they encouraged that. So,
So for students who may be encountering challenges and they have a passion for art, what is some of the advice that you can offer to them when they have to face this obstacle?
mm, that's tricky. Our parents can be very influential, and they always want the best for us. But I would definitely encourage you to please follow your own path and journey. And if you feel something when you make art, please continue to do that, and don't let anyone, parents, teachers, colleagues, professors, tell you that you can't do that or that you shouldn't do that, because it's an incredibly personal journey, and you, the individual, are going to be the only person who knows how that plays out for you, and how that makes you feel and how that helps you grow.
So when you speak about that, what do you feel when you create art? And since you weren't labeled as the sports person, but you love sports, how is it you've been able to weave in your passion for sports into your art and your animation?
Hmm. Art and sports kind of give me this parallel feeling that when I was much younger, I think it was about escape. My parents got divorced when I was a teenager, and that was pretty rough.
Mhm.
And they sent me away to a boarding school in Virginia, which was pretty rough too. But in the end, it was an amazing experience, and I'm really glad I was able to go there and met some amazing people and teachers. But during that time, I was struggling. I was struggling with self-confidence. I was struggling with not knowing where my home was. So art and sports became a place for me to find some release. I would feel calm when I made art. So every evening I would go into the art department because I was at this boarding school, and I could paint. And painting made me feel very centered, even though I didn't know anything about what that was as a teenager. But that same feeling exists for me now, 20 years later, when I go to my studio and I'm able to just dive into something. I feel calm. And I feel the same way about soccer. I still play soccer a couple of times a week as long as my body can handle it. And when I'm out there and the game starts, I'm able to just ease myself into it and stop thinking, stop being so critical, stop worrying about things in the future, and just be present.
How did you become introduced to animation, and what was one of the first projects that you ever did?
Mm. My first introduction is probably watching old anime films from the 80s and 90s from Japan on the Sci-Fi Channel. They used to run in the early 90s like a movie marathon, and different nights would be different things. It'd be like sci-fi night one night, but there would always be an anime night every few weeks. And I would set aside the whole evening, and I would start watching whenever it began, maybe at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. And I'd watch for hours until I just collapsed because I didn't have access to this stuff. And to watch that material imported from Japan, you would have to buy a VHS tape, which was quite expensive. So I'd get a couple of those VHS tapes at my birthday every year that had about a 30-minute episode of something on it, and then nothing. It'd be a dry spell. So when it came on the Sci-Fi Channel, I watched constantly. The second part of your question was, what was my first project?
Yeah, what was your first project?
I remember I was making cutout paper figures related to soccer in particular. And some folks from this magazine came to my studio space in Brooklyn. And this one guy, just in a very offhand way, said, "You should think about making these move. That would be really cool," because they had little articulating limbs.
Mm-hmm.
And the thought had truly never occurred to me. And so I set about trying to teach myself how to film things using stop motion. And the first thing I wanted to work on was related to Zidane in the 2006 World Cup, because he had an incredible tournament. He was in the twilight of his career,
Yeah,
but he also got sent off in the final for the notorious headbutt.
I
So
remember.
all soccer fans remember, right? And so I was very enamored with that whole story of this almost godlike figure in the sport, and then the fall from grace. And so I was trying to make some pieces related to that. And I remember the very first piece that I shot. As I was shooting it, I imagined this Zidane, this paper figure I'd made, was, walking smoothly across the screen and setting the ball down on the penalty spot.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent all evening shooting it. I got home, loaded it into my computer, and set up all the frames to try and see what it looked like. It was terrible. It was so bad. The legs were going everywhere. The arms were going the wrong direction because I'd never done it before. It was discouraging for about 5 minutes. And then it was really uplifting because I thought to myself, that was really fun, really challenging. I'm going to try again tomorrow.
Yeah. How long did it take you before you actually kind of got the hang of how to make your paper figures do what you needed them to do? Or even for that piece for Zidane?
It's still not happening. I'm getting closer. I'm getting closer, but it's a lifelong practice is kind of the way I feel about it. I definitely can look at my things that I make now and look at my work from the past and see a huge shift, a huge change, which makes me feel great. I'm making strides, but I want to keep getting better and better and better. Probably from that first experiment, I didn't make something that I felt happy about until a year later, I'd say.
Okay. What are some of the funny and or stressful things that happen in your line of work as an artist and animator?
Oh boy, there are a lot of stressful things, unfortunately. The deadlines, that's probably the most stressful thing when I'm working on a project for someone else, a commission piece.
Uh-huh.
Most people don't seem to know just how labor intensive making handcrafted animation is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll receive an interesting job offer and they'll want something in a week or in 5 days. And immediately we're still having the conversation about it. My gears are turning. Like, how many hours a day do I need to put in to get something close to being able to finish this? So that can be really stressful. It can also be very rewarding. I can't think of anything funny off the top of my head, but I can say something kind of uplifting is that I've met a really great community of other artists and animators through the years and people that are interested in film. And to be able to have that community to send my work to and for them to send their work to me and for us to be inspired by each other and to help build each other up and share stories with, especially industry stories, that's been crucial.
Can you tell us some interesting things about being an artist or an animator that the average person wouldn't know?
Hmm. I think this is true across a variety of different activities that when things appear incredibly simple, that can be very satisfying to us. I think sport is a good example. When you see an amazing athlete and the way their body and mind are in tune together and they make something very difficult, like dunking a basketball or dribbling across the field, seem so fluid. I think that is part of the mesmerizing reason we like watching sport or dance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the reasons why we like looking at art and animation in particular, because it suspends our reality and takes us into a new place entirely. And so I was thinking about this little airplane I'd made for an animation, and how was I going to make this airplane interesting? Because you need to have a reason to animate something. Because if I just needed to show the image of an airplane, I don't know, I could go film an airplane or find stock footage of a real airplane. So why animate it? And the reason I think is to put some of your own personality and character into that thing. And so I was like, oh, okay, I'll just make a little figurine with a little propeller and maybe a rubber band or something, like an old model toy. But then when you do that, it just looks like you're filming a model toy. So I had to come up with this kind of convoluted way of making something very simple, little airplane with propeller, be very complicated to then make it look simple all over again. I put the propeller on a stick with a green screen, and then I had the airplane on another stick. And so I've just filmed myself like kind of moving the airplane in the air. And then separately, I filmed the propeller spinning it on the stick. And I combined them digitally and green screened out all the background and the stick. And I ended up with something that looked just like an airplane flying. But it had some extra little something, some crafted element to it, something disconnected from reality that made it pop, I think.
Wow. What have been some of your most memorable projects that you've worked on and why?
Mm-hmm. One project in particular that was so fun, but so intense was when I got a call from Adidas that they were putting together a pop-up shop to sell the new messy boot that was coming out a few years ago in New York, in Soho.
Wow.
And they wanted me to make blacklit murals that would be around the entire shop.
Wow.
So at a certain time, all the people are gathered together looking at the shoes. They're on these cool pedestals. They're going to turn out the lights, and then all of my murals would go pop.
Nice.
I had 5 days to do that.
Oh my goodness.
And so my partner, she helped me. We cleared out. I have a better, larger studio now, which I'm very thankful for. But at the time, I was working out of my apartment, and she helped me move all the furniture and everything. And we laid down these huge plastic sheets. One of them was 20 feet long.
Wow.
So it was kind of curling up the walls of my apartment. And I used kind of like a charcoal pencil to draw out all of these scenes of Messi flying, doing superhero stuff, scoring goals, celebrating with Ronaldinho. And then she and I used X-Acto knives to cut everything out.
Wow.
So then we could deliver the mural to Adidas, who could then kind of plaster it on the wall, fill in all the stencil areas with blacklight paint, and remove it. So that was very memorable, very exciting, very stressful, but some really good memories. Yeah.
That's amazing. How did you feel? I'm assuming you attended the event. How did you feel when you saw the finished product in action and people's response to it?
I was actually kind of upset because I didn't get to go to the event because my wife and I met in Italy about 13 years ago. And so we had planned an anniversary trip to return to Italy. And then I got the job, and the event was on the same day that we were flying out. So I had to finish all the work on this strict deadline. I had to deliver it to the Adidas production facility in Brooklyn, and then we were immediately jumping on a flight. So unfortunately, I couldn't go to the event. And someone had floated this rumor, which ended up not being true, that Messi was maybe going to attend the event. And I was like, oh my God, I really want to enjoy this anniversary trip, but it's Messi. And my wife and I talked about whether we'd cancel the trip or not. And fortunately, we didn't. We went on the trip, and that was amazing. And I got to see some really cool photographs of the event, and some people reached out to me and said they saw it. So that was great.
But Messi was not there.
Messi was not there. No.
Okay. Glad you won that one.
Me too.
For students who are interested in learning more about animation, what resources would you suggest they take a look at?
There's a very famous book. It is called The Illusion of Life. It's by Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston. They are really classic, old school Disney animators who really helped formulate some of the classic tenets of animation. One of the most famous is called Squash and Stretch, which is when an object in animation squishes down and expands during movement at a very imperceptible way almost, because the frames are moving so fast. But when you perceive all the frames in motion, it makes things all bouncy and movie, which is why Disney animation looks so cool. So that book is a great resource, just as a jumping off point to sort of understand what a lot of animators, especially industry animators, what they think about. But I would also say Vimeo has been probably my greatest resource, especially for more contemporary work, more experimental work. And if you just go to the Vimeo watch page, there's an animation tab where they're posting really great stuff all the time. People from all over the world, students, really established professional animators, big teams with big production budgets, and then individuals, more like myself. That's been a huge resource for me. And I've made actually a lot of friends through watching pieces on there and just reaching out and saying, I really admire what you're doing here. And conversation goes from there.
Awesome. I think this would be the portion of our conversation where you can show us some of the fun things, demos that you have.
Sure. Let's see. I'm going to hit share screen here. Let's see. You might have to help me out, Kiana.
Let me see.
I'm hitting share screen and it's saying host disabled.
Okay. Okay, you're unmuted. Let's see. Oh, all panelists. All right. Who can start? Okay. Who can start sharing when someone else is sharing? Okay. Did that give you the ability?
Ah, there we go.
Awesome. Oh, there we are.
Can you see?
Oh,
Let's see, I'll turn the volume down. This is my latest personal short project that I put out a couple of months ago. It's called Eggshell. It's a mixed media personal film inspired by experiences with my family, experiences growing up in the South. And it's a lot about transition and loss, as well as some rough stints I've had with anxiety over the past couple of years.
mm-hmm.
And so this opening sequence that you'll see right here is this memory that popped into my head pretty recently of being quite young and having this really tough swim coach who was a former Marine. And I remember being really scared of the pool, and he just came along, he tossed me in the pool,
Oh my goodness.
just like that little character. And that was a very formative kind of intense experience for me. And so this piece kind of chronicles little moments like that. And I got a bad concussion in a soccer game about 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
The guy tackled me from behind and I fell on my head, and it really messed me up. It kind of did some strange things with my memory. My ear was popping for about 2 months, had some really strange dreams, some hallucinations.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. And it sort of helped me finish this piece, because I was about 3/4 of the way through with this project and I couldn't figure out where it was going.
Mm-hmm.
And all the kind of self-reflective time I had with my concussion-induced insomnia helped me figure out that this piece was about anxiety, yes, but it was also about the control that we can have over our anxiety or stress or whatever it is. And so the end of the piece is about my partner, my wife, and our bolstering each other and helping each other.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so the piece it's really mixed media. There are some elements that are just small cut paper, like this little deer here.
Yeah.
And there are drawn elements like these squares moving back. And then there are little sculptural elements like this door that's spinning towards us now. It's just painted cardboard. And I'll make little hinges and use tape and thread and stuff so that it can open just like that. There we go.
Yeah. So do you feel like you just get to have fun and create stuff all day?
For the
I
most
know there's a
part,
stressful component because you know are beholden to clients and things like that, but really you just get to create, and it's on the outside looking in, like have fun with your passion.
I think so. Yes. I think there's sort of two aspects to my artistic life.
Mm-hmm.
There are the times where I'm working on pieces like this, which was a long project. I started on this and then finished it maybe 9 months, 10 months later. So it took the better part of a year. But yes, for the most part, this was very much about me finding myself, discovering things, having fun for the most part, sometimes not fun, but still enriching.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a whole nother side of me that, because for total transparency, I make $0 for making a piece like this.
Mm-hmm.
9 months of work and nothing. I actually spend a lot of money because I buy a lot of materials, paper, supplies. Fortunately, I have a studio through an amazing residency program, which is great. But otherwise, I'd have to rent a studio.
Mm-hmm.
But when clients see work like this and see maybe some of the inventive things that I'm trying to do with animation or with artwork, they then see that that could potentially fit into a project that they're working on. And that's how I get paid work.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, there are two sides. There's this open, inventive, sort of free side of me, which is the most fun, let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are projects for other people that can range from very, very open. So right now I'm working on a project with a great production crew in Australia about soccer, actually, about soccer fans. And so I'm co-directing the piece with a director named Matthew Bate. Really cool guy. He's done some great things, screened features at South by Southwest and at Sundance. So this project is kind of my dream because we were able to be funded by the Australian government and make the thing that we want to make.
Yeah.
But then there are other projects where it is a very particular client and it's essentially, it's advertising work. How can I use the things I know to make their product look cooler? Which can be challenging. It can be really fun, but you're definitely beholden to someone else's vision more than you are to your own.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Pretty fun, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. I'll show you a bit of this new piece that was released yesterday, actually. Can you still see?
Yes.
All right. So this is a piece inspired by Desert Island Comics, which is a very wonderful store in Williamsburg. Very little place, filled with zines, comic books, prints. And what I did was I sourced audio from comic book fans all around the world, actually. And over a 12-day period, I mashed up their stories with animations that I was making. This is a story about, this is from Gabe, the proprietor of the shop, actually. And he was a little kid and sick and had a bad fever, and his mom brought him a Mad magazine. And reading the Mad magazine made him feel better. This is a little reference to the Sea Monkey ads that were in the back of Archie Comics back in the day. This is my story, the one I was telling earlier about falling on my head during the soccer game. And at night during that period, I was reading this book, Crawl Space, by an amazing illustrator named Jesse Jacobs. And the book is essentially about kids who find another world inside the laundry, inside their washing machine. And they go to this world to explore and learn and mess around. And that book was important for me during that stressful time.
And I'm assuming you got that book from that bookstore?
I did.
Nice.
Yes, I did. This is a story about a woman who, when she was a kid, she would go to her grandpa's house and he would have endless stacks of Far Side books. And she felt very, very adult reading the Far Side because it was kind of more intelligent humor, I guess.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, this is about a guy when he was a kid in Argentina. He found this rather risque graphic novel in his mom's library, and he would check it out when she was out of the house. And I interspersed all of the pieces with these little comic vignettes of Superman and Batman.
That's so for students who may want to, get started on doing something now, what are kind of some of the basic materials they need? Can they just use their iPhone to start doing stuff with paper and other materials?
I use my iPhone all the time, actually. I'm due for an upgrade, to be honest, but the iPhone is super useful, super easy to use, and I will always maintain that good filmmaking, good animation, good art making, it has nothing to do with how expensive your materials are or how nice your camera is. It has everything to do with your passion for the project and how honest you can be in telling your story. So yes, with an iPhone, it'd be useful to have a tripod of some kind, even one of those little like claw tripods that can just hold your iPhone still so that you can take a series of photos. This is if you want to work in stop motion, which that just means that instead of rapidly filming frames, you are taking a singular photo at a time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then 12 photos or 24 photos would then make up, depending on how fast you want it to be, 1 second of footage, for lack of a better word. So I like working that way in stop motion. This was a story about a woman who loved this book that her ex-boyfriend gave her, Who Needs Donuts? And she left the window open and a pigeon came in and did its business on the book. And the boyfriend saw that as like a bad omen about their relationship.
That's awesome.
Well, up to you. Do you want to see? I'll tell you about this last little thing here that you're seeing.
Okay.
Pop-up Magazine is an amazing event that happens in cities around the US where storytellers and writers get on stage and they tell their unique stories to a live audience. And there's a live band playing, and then artists and musicians work to illustrate their stories. And so I had the really great experience of making a long animated piece about John Moallem's story, who's a writer based on the West Coast.
Okay.
And the whole event went down at BAM. And so I got to see my animations playing up there in front of everyone at BAM while John was on the stage telling the story. That was a pretty great experience.
Wow. What would you say, well, where can people find you and your work online and on social?
The best place is probably my Vimeo page. If you just go to Vimeo and search for Case Jernigan, I should pop up. And my 2 Instagram accounts, I'm pretty active on too. WCJERN, that's me, as well as Off Foot is the soccer stuff.
Lastly, what is the best piece of career advice that you would give your younger self?
Oh boy, my younger, insecure self. It would definitely be to be more secure, be more confident, trust yourself, trust your choices. If something feels good, just go with that. And do not let anyone tell you otherwise.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your amazing story with us, Case.
Oh, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
And if you want to catch the next quarantine break, it's going to take place at 1 o'clock with You're Hired by Global Human Resource Director Clintoria Session. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Case.
Oh, thanks so much, Kiana.